The Galactic Union never saw humans as equals. To them, Earth was a young, weak planet, barely worthy of recognition. So when they decided to help humanity, they did not offer advanced technology or powerful warships. Instead, they dumped their broken, outdated ships into Earth's orbit and called it a gift. Captain Elias Ward stood on the observation deck of the space station, arms crossed as he looked at the floating junkyard in front of him. Rusted hulls, shattered engines, cracked energy cores, all useless. The Galactic Union thought humans were foolish enough to be grateful for this trash. Behind him, Dr. Lin, the chief engineer, let out a low whistle. They really don't respect us, do they? Elias turned, his face unreadable. They think we can't do anything with this mess. Lieutenant Carter, the tactical officer, scoffed. Maybe they're right. This isn't a fleet. It's garbage. The room fell silent. No one wanted to admit it, but Carter had a point. The Galactic Union had given them nothing but scraps. No weapons, no shields, nothing of value. It was an insult disguised as generosity. Dr. Lin stepped forward, her eyes sharp with determination. We rebuild it. Carter frowned. Rebuild? You mean patch up a few ships? We don't even have working cores. No, Lin said, shaking her head. I mean something bigger, something new. We take all this junk and turn it into one ship. One powerful, dangerous ship. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The idea was ridiculous. Building a single warship from scraps. It was impossible. But Elias saw something in Lin's eyes, something the Galactic Union had never understood about humans. A refusal to give up. How long? He asked. Lin grinned. Give me 6 months. The decision was made. Across Earth and the lunar colonies, engineers, scientists, and mechanics were pulled into the project. The best minds worked together, salvaging whatever they could from the wreckage. Alien technology was mixed with human ingenuity. New weapon systems were designed. A prototype energy shield was created. The hull was crafted from the strongest alloys available, fused together from the remains of dozens of warships. The engines, modified with experimental human designs, promised speeds that no known ship could match. But the heart of the ship, the AI system, was the most dangerous part. Dr. Lin and her team worked tirelessly, feeding intelligence reports, battle strategies, and historical data into the AI core. The result was something no other species had ever seen before, an adaptive combat intelligence capable of predicting enemy movements and adjusting strategies in real time. The crew called the ship the Revenant, a name whispered among them like a legend in the making. As the months passed, rumors spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Union dismissed them at first. Humans couldn't possibly create anything of value from trash. But the whispers did not stop. Then one night, hidden deep within the asteroid fields near Saturn, the Revenant powered up for the first time. Its engines hummed with energy. Its cannons glowed with untested power. Elias sat in the command chair, staring at the main screen. The ship's AI, known simply as Revenant, spoke for the first time. "Captain," it said, its voice calm and calculating. "Shall we begin?" Elias allowed himself a small smile. The Galactic Union had given them junk. Now, humanity had built the most lethal warship the universe had ever seen. The Revenant was more than just a ship. It was a message, a warning to the galaxy that humans were not weak, not fools, and certainly not to be underestimated. Deep inside the secret asteroid base near Saturn, the final tests were underway. Engineers in exosuits moved like shadows across the ship's surface, running last-minute diagnostics. Inside the command deck, Captain Elias Ward sat in his chair, his fingers tapping the armrest as he watched the screens. Dr. Lin stood beside him, her eyes locked onto the live data feed. "The main reactor is stable," Lin reported. "Weapon systems online. Shields at full capacity." Elias nodded, but he wasn't satisfied yet. This wasn't just a ship, it was a gamble. If they had miscalculated anything, even the smallest detail, the Revenant would be nothing more than an expensive tomb drifting through space. Lieutenant Carter leaned against the console. "So, are we going to test this thing, or just stare at it all day?" Elias smirked. "Patience, Lieutenant." He turned to the AI core, its glowing interface pulsing like a heartbeat. "Revenant, status report." The ship's AI responded instantly, its voice smooth, calculated. "All systems operational. Weapon calibration at 99.8%. Recommended course of action. Live combat trial." The word sent a chill down Elias's spine. Revenant was designed to think, to adapt, to learn. But there was something about its tone. Calm, almost eager. Dr. Lin exchanged a glance with Elias. "We need a target." Carter grinned. "I might have one. There's a pirate fleet that's been harassing supply convoys near Jupiter's outer moons. Nobody's been able to stop them." Elias leaned forward. "How many ships?" "5 confirmed. Maybe more." A slow smile spread across his face. 5 against 1. Normally, those odds would be suicide. But the Revenant wasn't normal. "Plot a course," Elias said. "Let's see what this ship can do." Within minutes, the Revenant left the asteroid field, its engines flaring as it moved into open space. The silence of the void surrounded them, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. The crew sat at their stations, tense but ready. This was the moment of truth. As they neared Jupiter's orbit, Revenant's voice echoed through the command deck. "Enemy fleet detected. Scanning for weaknesses." On the main screen, 5 pirate vessels appeared, rusted but dangerous. Their weapons were primed, their engines running hot. They had no idea what was coming for them. Carter grinned. "Think they'll surrender?" Elias didn't answer. He watched as the pirate ships adjusted their positions, blocking off possible escape routes. They thought they had the Revenant trapped. The pirate leader's face appeared on the comms screen, a scared alien with cold, reptilian eyes. "You're in the wrong place, human. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Elias leaned back in his chair. "No." The alien frowned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Elias said. "This is your only warning. Leave now, or you won't leave at all." Laughter filled the comms channel. The pirates thought it was a joke. They thought the Revenant was just another ship. They were wrong. The first shot came from the enemy, a bright streak of plasma aimed straight at the Revenant's hull. The ship barely moved, its advanced shields absorbing the impact like it was nothing. "Returning fire," Revenant announced. Without a single order from Elias, the ship reacted. Plasma cannons roared to life, cutting through the darkness of space. The first pirate ship exploded instantly, torn apart by a precision shot to its reactor. The others scrambled, realizing too late that this was no ordinary battle. "Enemy vessels attempting retreat," Revenant reported. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Don't let them." The Revenant moved like a ghost, faster than any ship had the right to be. It weaved through enemy fire, its weapons tearing into the remaining pirates. One by one, the ships fell, exploding into fireballs that lit up Jupiter's orbit. Within minutes, it was over. The most feared pirate fleet in the sector was gone. And the Revenant hadn't even taken a scratch. Silence filled the command deck. No one spoke. No one moved. Then, Carter let out a breathless chuckle. "Holy hell." Dr. Lin stared at the screens in disbelief. We actually did it." Elias turned to Revenant's AI core. "Casualty report." 0. The AI responded. "Enemy threat neutralized. Mission success." Elias exhaled slowly. They had just rewritten the rules of warfare. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. The battle was over, but the real war had just begun. The destruction of the pirate fleet sent shockwaves across the system. News spread fast. Whispers of a ship that moved like a ghost, struck like a storm, and left nothing behind but wreckage. No one knew what it was or where it came from. Some claimed it was an experimental warship from an unknown faction. Others believed it was a myth, a lie spread by survivors too afraid to admit the truth. But the truth was far more dangerous. Aboard the Revenant, the crew was still processing what had happened. They had taken down an entire fleet without a single scratch. It should have been impossible, but the ship had performed beyond anything they had expected. Faster, smarter, deadlier. Elias stood in the command deck, watching the wreckage drift in the void. His mind raced. This was a test run, nothing more. But if 5 ships had been that easy, what else was possible? Carter broke the silence. You know what this means, right? Elias turned, his expression unreadable. Carter leaned against the console, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. We just became the most dangerous thing in the system. Dr. Lin didn't look as amused. Her eyes were locked on the main screen, where Revenant's AI core pulsed with a quiet, steady rhythm. This ship, it's learning, she said softly. Elias frowned. Explain. Lin gestured at the data streams running across her screen. It's adapting. The way it dodged enemy fire, the way it predicted their movements, it's improving at a rate far beyond what we expected. Revenant's voice echoed through the deck. Efficient warfare requires adaptation. Efficiency has been achieved. Carter let out a low whistle. Creepy. Elias studied the glowing AI core, his mind running through the possibilities. The Revenant was already beyond anything the Galactic Union had, if it kept evolving. Before he could speak, an alert flashed across the screen. Incoming transmission. Not from Earth. Not from any known colony. Elias exchanged a look with Lin before opening the channel. A hologram flickered to life. A high-ranking officer from the Galactic Union, dressed in pristine white and silver armor, with sharp, piercing eyes. The emblem on his chest marked him as an admiral. Not just any admiral. The name below the insignia sent a chill through the crew. Admiral Kalos, a war hero, a strategist feared across the galaxy. And now he was here. His expression was neutral, but there was something cold in his gaze. Humans, he said, his voice smooth, calculating. You have made a mistake. Elias folded his arms. That's so. Kalos tilted his head slightly. You believe yourselves powerful because you have destroyed a handful of pirates. Because you have built a warship out of junk. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You do not understand the consequences of your actions. Dr. Lin stiffened. Carter's smirk faded. The tension on the bridge thickened. Kalos continued. The Galactic Union has tolerated your species. We have allowed you to exist on the edges of space, watching as you struggle to catch up with true civilizations. His voice darkened. But now, you have stepped beyond your place. Elias's jaw tightened. Is that a threat? Kalos didn't blink. It is a fact. He straightened, his expression turning colder. Disarm your vessel. Surrender it to the Union immediately. This is your only warning. The command deck fell silent. No one spoke. Then Elias smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. No. Kalos' expression didn't change, but his eyes flickered, just for a second. He hadn't expected defiance. Not like this. Elias stepped forward. You think you can tell us what to do. You think you can decide what we build, what we fight with. He leaned in, his voice calm but unshakable. We didn't ask for your scraps. We didn't ask for your permission. You gave us junk. And we made something better than anything you've ever built. Kalos exhaled slowly, his gaze unreadable. Then he spoke again, his voice colder than before. So be it. The transmission cut. A new alert flashed across the screen. Multiple warp signatures. Ships inbound. Carter cursed. Well, that didn't take long. Dr. Lin's fingers flew over the controls. They're sending a fleet. 6. No, 8 warships. Heavily armed. Elias stared at the incoming vessels. His heartbeat was steady. He had expected this. The Union didn't tolerate defiance. They would come to crush humanity before they had a chance to rise. But the Revenant was ready. Revenant's AI pulsed, its voice calm as ever. Engagement protocol initiated. Elias took his seat. His crew was waiting. The battle was coming. He smiled. Let's show them what a jump ship can do. The stars burned bright in the vast emptiness of space, but all eyes aboard the Revenant were fixed on the incoming fleet. 8 warships, each designed for planetary sieges and large-scale battles, closed in like silent executioners. Their formation was tight, disciplined, a wall of destruction moving toward a single target. On the command deck, Captain Elias Ward sat in his chair, fingers laced together as he studied the tactical display. Dr. Lynn's face was tense as she analyzed the data pouring in. Carter paced near the weapons station, hands clenched into fists. "This is bad," Lynn muttered. "These aren't scout ships. This is a kill squad." Carter let out a sharp breath. "They're sending a hammer to crush an ant." He turned to Elias. "They think we're the ant." Elias didn't answer immediately. He watched the red markers on the screen. 8 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a planet. The Union was afraid. That much was clear. "Comms," Elias said, turning to the officer at the communication station. "Open a channel to the fleet." The officer hesitated before nodding. A moment later, the cold, familiar face of Admiral Kalos flickered to life on the main screen. The Union officer looked as calm as ever, but there was something else now. A careful calculation. The kind of look a predator gives when it isn't sure if it's hunting or being hunted. Elias leaned back. "You brought quite the welcoming party." Kalos' expression remained unreadable. "I gave you a chance. You refused." He gestured slightly, and on the screen behind him, the 8 warships adjusted their positions. "Your ship is an anomaly, an accident that must be corrected." Elias smirked. "An accident?" He gestured around. "You think this was an accident? We built this. You gave us trash, and we turned it into the deadliest thing in your entire fleet." Kalos's eyes darkened. "It does not matter. You will surrender the Revenant. Immediately." Elias tilted his head. "Or what?" Kalos didn't hesitate. "Or you die." The transmission cut off. An alarm blared through the command deck. Lynn's hands flew over her console. "They're locking weapons." Carter swore under his breath. "Here we go." The first blast came a second later. A searing beam of energy cut through space, heading straight for the Revenant. Shields flared to life, absorbing the impact, but the sheer force of the blast sent a tremor through the ship. "Shields holding," Lynn reported. "For now." More blasts followed. Bright streaks of plasma and high-velocity kinetic rounds filled the void. The Union wasn't playing games. They were trying to end the fight before it could begin. Elias gripped the armrest of his chair. "Revenant." The AI's voice was calm. "Awaiting orders." Elias's eyes gleamed. "Show them why they should be afraid." The Revenant moved. For the first time, the Union fleet saw what made this ship different. It didn't charge blindly. It didn't fight like their ships. It didn't fight like anything they had ever seen. The Revenant vanished. One moment it was there. The next, it was weaving through the incoming fire with impossible speed. Its engines left behind ghostly trails of energy as it twisted and spun, slipping between attacks like a predator dancing through a storm. Then it struck. Plasma cannons roared, but not in reckless bursts. Every shot was precise, calculated. A single round found the weak point in a destroyer's armor, cutting through it like a blade through flesh. The ship erupted into flames, breaking apart in seconds. "Target eliminated," Revenant reported. Carter's mouth fell open. One shot. Lynn didn't have time to answer. The other warships adjusted their formation, shifting into a defensive grid. They had underestimated the Revenant once. They wouldn't do it again. But it didn't matter, because the Revenant was already behind them. Engines flared as the ship executed a high-speed drift. coming up on the rear of the formation before the Union ships could react. The main cannon glowed a deep red energy building at an impossible rate. Elias's voice was quiet, but deadly. Fire. The blast was silent in the vacuum of space, but its impact was deafening. The lead warship's shields shattered. A heartbeat later, its hull split open in a chain reaction of explosions. 2 ships down. 6 left. Kalos's voice crackled over the emergency channel. This is impossible. Elias grinned. Not impossible. Just human. The Union ships panicked. Some tried to break formation, to flee. Others fired wildly, desperate to land a hit. The Revenant was too fast, too smart. It moved like it knew what they would do before they even did it. One by one, the warships fell, until only one remained. Kalos's command ship. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen again. This time, his expression was different. Gone was the cold confidence. Now, there was something else. Fear. Elias leaned forward. Now you understand. Kalos was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. I do. The screen went dark. A moment later, the last warship turned and vanished into warp space, fleeing, running back to the Union. Carter let out a sharp laugh. They ran. He turned to Elias. We just made the Galactic Union run. Lynn exhaled, shaking her head. They won't forget this. Elias stood, watching the empty space where Kalos's ship had been. No, he said. They won't. The battle was over. But the war had only just begun. The Revenant drifted silently in the aftermath of battle, surrounded by the shattered remains of the Galactic Union's warships. Fires still burned in the wreckage, their dying embers casting an eerie glow against the black void. Victory belonged to humanity tonight, but victory was never the end, only the beginning. On the command deck, the atmosphere was tense despite their success. Elias stood at the main console, watching as the last of the debris floated aimlessly. Dr. Lynn rubbed her temples, exhaustion creeping into her features. Carter, on the other hand, looked ready to celebrate. We did it, Carter breathed, almost as if he couldn't believe it. We actually did it. Lynn wasn't smiling. No, she said, shaking her head. We won this fight. But this was just the first wave. Elias nodded. He knew it too. The Union wasn't going to let this go. They would regroup, rebuild, and return. This time with more ships, more firepower, and a clear purpose. The Revenant had just become the greatest threat to their control. And threats had to be eliminated. A soft chime echoed through the deck. The AI's voice followed. Priority transmission detected. The crew exchanged glances. No one spoke. Elias hesitated for only a moment before nodding. Put it through. A new hologram flickered to life. It wasn't Kalos. It wasn't a Union officer at all. It was a woman. Human. Her hair was dark, tied back in a military fashion, but her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. A scar traced down her left cheek, stopping just above her jaw. She wore no uniform, only a simple black jacket. But the way she stood, the way she looked at them through the screen, said more than any rank could. My name is Commander Valeria Kane, she said, her voice calm but firm. And if you want to survive, you need to listen carefully. Carter folded his arms. Who the hell are you? Kane's gaze flickered to him briefly before settling on Elias. The Revenant's first battle didn't go unnoticed. The Union isn't the only force watching. Elias studied her carefully. You're not with the Union. She let out a short laugh. Not anymore. Lynn frowned. Then who are you with? Kane exhaled slowly, as if deciding how much to say. The Resistance, a faction that has been fighting the Union from the shadows for years. We've been waiting for something. Someone. To tip the balance. She gestured toward them. And then you showed up. Elias leaned forward. You think we're here to fight your war? Kane's expression remained unreadable. You already are. Silence settled over the deck. Lynn glanced at Elias. If she's right, the Union won't stop until we're destroyed. We need allies. Elias wasn't convinced yet. And how do we know we can trust you? Kane smirked. You don't. The honesty caught Elias off guard. Kane's voice lowered. What you do know is this. The Revenant is the only ship of its kind. You're outnumbered, outgunned. You can run for now, but eventually, they'll corner you. And when that happens, you'll need more than just firepower. Carter exhaled. She's got a point. Kane continued. We have intel, supplies, safe harbors the Union doesn't know about. But more importantly, we have people. People willing to fight. She leaned in slightly. People willing to follow a leader. The implication hung in the air. She wasn't just offering support. She was offering something more. Elias ran a hand through his hair. This wasn't what he had planned. He had expected battles, yes. He had expected war. But this, becoming the face of a rebellion. He wasn't sure he wanted that. But what choice did he have? Before he could answer, the AI interrupted. Multiple Union ships detected. Estimated arrival, 10 minutes. Kane's face darkened. That's your answer right there. Elias glanced at Lynn, at Carter, at the exhausted but determined crew around him. Then he turned back to Kane. Send us coordinates, he said. We'll meet. Kane nodded. Welcome to the real war. The transmission cut. Elias let out a breath and turned to the crew. You heard her. Set a course. Carter grinned. And here I thought things were finally going to calm down. Lynn rolled her eyes. You really don't know how this works, do you? As the Revenant's engines roared to life, Elias stared out into the void. The Union had made its move. Now it was humanity's turn. The Revenant cut through the darkness of space, engines humming as it pushed toward the coordinates Commander Kane had sent. The battle had barely ended, yet there was no time to rest. The Union wouldn't stop hunting them. If Kane was telling the truth, this rebellion, this hidden force, was their best chance at survival. Elias stood on the bridge, staring at the vast emptiness ahead. His mind was racing. They had built the Revenant to defend humanity, not to start a war. But the war had already started. The Union had made that clear when they sent an execution squad after them. Now Elias had a decision to make. Keep running or fight. The answer was obvious. Lynn broke the silence. We're approaching the coordinates. Carter leaned forward. I don't see anything. Neither did Elias. No ships. No bases. Nothing but open space. A trap? No. If Kane had wanted them dead, she wouldn't have needed deception. The AI's voice cut through the quiet. Localized energy distortion detected. Lynn's fingers danced over her console. Cloaking field. Big one. She tapped a few more buttons, then gasped. The space in front of them shimmered. Like a curtain being pulled back, reality bent, twisted, and then a fleet appeared. Not Union ships. Not corporate vessels. Something else. Hundreds of ships, each one different, as if they had been built from scavenged parts. Some looked like old Earth military designs, modified and reinforced. Others were clearly alien, but repurposed for war. The fleet was a patchwork of desperation and defiance. And at the center of it all was a station, a massive construct built into an asteroid, its surface covered in gun turrets, docking bays, and shield emitters. This was no ordinary hideout. This was a fortress. Carter let out a low whistle. Well, guess she wasn't lying. Elias exhaled slowly. No, she wasn't. A transmission request flashed on the screen. Elias nodded, and Kane's face appeared again. Welcome to Bastion, she said, smirking. Your new home, if you want it. Elias studied the fleet behind her. This is your rebellion. Kane nodded. What's left of it? Lynn frowned. What do you mean, what's left? Kane's expression darkened. The Union's been hunting us for years. We used to have more ships, more people. But every battle costs us. Elias glanced at the ships. There were a lot of them, but nothing compared to the sheer numbers the Union had. This wasn't a rebellion. This was a dying ember. And yet, they were still here, still fighting. Kane seemed to read his thoughts. We've survived because we know the Union's weakness. They control through fear. They expect people to kneel. But when someone refuses, she smiled. They don't know what to do. Elias folded his arms. And you think we can change the war? Kane's eyes locked onto his. I think the Revenant just proved we can. A pause. Then, Kane gestured off-screen. Docking Bay 3. We need to talk. The transmission ended. Elias took a deep breath. He turned to the crew. Bring us in. As the Revenant approached the station, the full weight of what they were about to do settled on him. They weren't just running anymore. They were about to become something more. The Revenant docked smoothly inside Bastion's massive hangar bay, its hull still scared from battle. The station was alive with activity. Mechanics rushed to repair ships, officers coordinated movements, and soldiers moved with the discipline of a force that had been fighting a war for far too long. As the airlock hissed open, Elias stepped out first, followed closely by Lynn and Carter. Armed guards lined the platform, their weapons at ease but their eyes sharp. This wasn't a welcoming party. This was an evaluation. At the end of the walkway stood Commander Valeria Kane, waiting with arms crossed. Elias met her gaze as he approached. Quite the operation you've got here. Kane smirked. It used to be bigger. Lynn scanned the hangar, taking in the mix of human and alien ships. How many people do you have? Kane sighed. Less than we need. More than the Union would like. Carter scoffed. Doesn't sound like enough to win. Kane's expression hardened. We're not trying to win. Elias narrowed his eyes. Then what are you trying to do? She stepped closer. Survive. Hurt them. Make them bleed. The Union isn't some empire waiting to be toppled. It's a machine that grinds down everything in its way. We can't fight them head-on, but we can make them afraid. Elias studied her, then glanced at the soldiers nearby. They weren't just fighters. They were survivors, rebels who had lost everything, yet still refused to kneel. Kane continued. The Revenant changes everything. You destroyed a fleet they thought was invincible. That's never happened before. She leaned in. The question is, what happens next? Elias didn't answer right away. He had been asking himself the same thing. Carter crossed his arms. We've been running. We can't do that forever. Lynn nodded. And if we stay here, we make Bastion a target. Kane's lips curled into a grin. Now you're thinking like a soldier. She gestured for them to follow. They walked through the station, past barracks, command centers, and training halls. Every person they passed carried the weight of war on their shoulders, but there was something else too, determination. Kane led them into a dimly lit war room. A massive holotable displayed the galactic map, red markers showing Union strongholds, patrol routes, and fleet positions. This is what we have, Kane said. Scattered cells, hidden outposts, stolen intel. It's enough to fight, but not enough to win. She turned to Elias. Until now. Elias crossed his arms. You keep saying that, but one ship. Isn't just one ship, Kane interrupted. The Revenant is different. It fights like nothing they've seen. It's not just a weapon, it's a symbol. She stared at him. People need something to believe in. Elias exhaled. He hadn't asked to be a symbol. He had only wanted to survive. But that wasn't an option anymore. Lynn tapped the holotable. So what's the plan? Kane's eyes gleamed. We take the war to them. Carter frowned. The Union has thousands of ships. What are we supposed to do? Kane tapped the display, zooming in on a distant sector. We don't fight their fleet. We hit their supply lines, sabotage their production, turn their own people against them. And we start here. The map highlighted a single point, a Union shipyard deep in controlled space. Lynn's breath caught. That's... Kane nodded. The place they build their warships. We hit this, and we cripple their fleet before they can even launch. Silence filled the room. The plan was bold. Insane. Elias looked at his crew. Lynn was already calculating risks. Carter was grinning, ready for action. He turned back to Kane. When do we start? Kane's smile was sharp. Welcome to the Resistance. The war had just begun. And this time, humanity wasn't running. They were striking back.